Let's see here. We are live. Hold on. We're live. Wait. Yep, we are live.
Staying alive, staying alive.
Look at this beautiful 10-gallon hat. This is a real deal. All right, so we are on episode 79, and I named it the Yellowstone Edition. This is a legal update with, the Johnny Cash himself. Also known as
I'm not the man in black this morning.
True, but you're definitely the Consigliere. So where are we at? Let's talk. So why the hat? I didn't realize that they were going to cancel Garth Brooks today. That's not why I got the hat on. But I've been watching Yellowstone, and it makes me want to move to Montana. Not move, but like get a place in Billings or somewhere in Utah, Colorado, and get me a ranch and get back to my my roots.
Your roots. Hey, Wyoming is in our Region 11, so I have good realtors to sell you a horse farm.
You gotta admit, I wear a cowboy hat good. Come on.
If you say so yourself.
So tell them the background, Pops. So let's jump. It's episode 78. We're going to be doing a legal update. Make sure to type questions in, but listen, it's boring just talking about real estate. So let's do some backstory. Dave grew up in the country, right?
Well, I have family from the country, yeah. In fact, when I told my grandpa that I wanted to be a lawyer, he looked at me and he said, my uncle was hung in Reno in 1895 for stealing horses, and you'll be the second worst son in the family. So there you go.
Some bitch.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm well aware of where I place on the social strata as a lawyer, slightly above horse thief. So.
All right. So little known fact, everyone thinks New York is all skyscrapers and, no grass, but the actual state of New York is all grass. And then my father, even though he grew up in Queens, he actually met my mother in the only barn in Queens, right?
Yeah, we were both walking ponies for a job in Flushing by Casino Park, and I was 14 and I met her at 15, I guess 15. And from walking ponies, we had to bring them in the barn where there were horses. When they rented the horses out, in the winter, no one was able to ride them because no one wanted to ride. So we took that job of riding horses to keep them fit. And by 15, I got my first horse. Your mother got hers at 15. And that's how we met in Flushing, New York. And from 15, then we married and moved to Long Island, and we had an acre and a half and a barn in the backyard and 3 to 4 horses there. And from 15 to 40, then we moved to Long Island when I was 25, 10 years later. And from 25 to 45, 20 years, I had horses in the backyard, show horses. And all that part of my life, that 30 years was reining horses and going to shows across the country, which I dragged Dave to, and the horse world, which was a great, great bunch of people.
My whole life. Tomorrow is the anniversary of Cowgirl making me a man. Tomorrow. I was
just about to say, calm down, please.
Right?
It's my sister's birthday, so I know the date. Yes. My poor sister now equates her birthday to the date of Dave losing his virginity. Okay, now. Yes.
28 years ago tomorrow.
8 years ago?
28, yeah. Well, I'm a born again now.
Yes.
So I've been watching this show, Yellowstone, Pops, and Dave, I was telling you about that too. And you gotta love this year. I wanted a second home in California, but now more and more because of this crazy year, I'm thinking about how awesome. I want to go full circle and have a barn and have horses and have acreage and land and be somewhere in Region 11 in the Rocky Mountains. I know it's crazy, right, Pops? So here's the backstory. Like, this is how it works in life. If you're into sports, your kids will become artists and singers and all sorts of things. Look at Dave. He went exactly in the opposite direction of what his family, probably assumed he would be, right? Became a city slicker attorney, little heathen.
City
Uh,
slicker.
Pretty much.
My parents were into horses. My first hat was a cowboy hat, probably. I mean, I was on a horse as early
Pony.
as I can remember.
3,
I was into sports, but man, it just makes me feel like, whew, I wouldn't mind doing that NRHA. You really need to watch this show, though, Pops. You would love it. So, all right. So what I was thinking also is, you know that you guys both watch Hamilton?
Yeah.
twice.
You know that song, It Must Be Nice. It must be nice to have Washington by your side, right? And my family's been singing this to each other. Like, I've been joking. I think I sent out a blast to a real estate company or in general, say, it must be nice to have Urban Nest by your side. But the reality is, it's nice to have Dave Sanders by your side. And I think about it and I'm like, without you, Pops, I would probably be in prison or in a ditch right now. And without Dave Sanders, I would probably be in jail. So it's nice to have a voice of reason to whisper into your ear. And that's having an attorney and having legal staff, a legal counsel, excuse me. And when people do things that are completely over the top, from being on the board, I think you were one of the reasons why the association hired Dave, right?
That was my year. I got to pick
Yeah.
up 2013. He came, beginning of.
And
That's right.
great. I mean, and he was a little expensive, right? You had to convince Nelson to hire him, right? Because
No, Nelson and I, God rest his soul, had to convince the board when Nelson reviewed all the applications with me and said, this guy, speaking about you, Dave, is a little more expensive. And I said, you get what you pay for. So it was a dual thing to go to the board and say, let's pay a little more and get the right guy. And
I say Nelson's cheap.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was a 7-year run, right, Dave? You were there?
Almost 7 years.
Yeah.
So he became the Wyatt Earp.
Yes.
Wyatt Earp, and I'm, what am I, Doc? Doc?
Yeah.
You're
Only if you have tuberculosis.
yeah. Well,
Yeah. Don't be Doc.
he did live a good life though. So
Mhm.
what we have Dave on here for is mostly for our Urban Nest agents, but also to share with the entire real estate community how to not get in trouble. And he keeps us grounded. And it's not even about getting in trouble. When people it's being armed up. You know, the best part about having an attorney is not using an attorney, is knowing that you have it available, but having the wherewithal to just walk away. And you think about, we should all have a Dave Sanders filter on our social media.
No one would have social media if it was my choice.
But like a little Dave Sanders icon popping up going, you really want to post this? You really want to engage? Is it worth it?
Well, the best advice I would give you is don't post anything you wouldn't want your mother, your clergyman, or a jury of your peers to look at.
Basically, Dave's a voice of reason. And that's really good to know, because, you know, an entrepreneur is always like going 100 miles an hour. Realtors are entrepreneurs by nature, and they're always pushing the limit with creativity and marketing and putting deals together and things like that. And the whole reason why we have any code of ethics left and decorum with each other is because of rules, and rules being not just implemented, but enforced, right? Usually we don't have to rewrite the policies and procedures. You just have to enforce them and be reminded about them. And that's where Dave comes in. And he's one of my best friends in the entire world, but he's also a huge resource for our company and for my father and I. So I don't know how much more of an introduction you can get, my friend. Let's
I
jump.
appreciate it.
Please, everyone, ask some questions for Dave. He's going to probably give you I'm not sure, an attorney, and don't hold this against me, but ask some questions. So let's just jump in. You wanted to talk about right off the bat, some mediation changes with the association.
Yeah.
Go for it.
So again, caveat, this is not considered legal advice. If you have any specific legal questions, you should seek out a competent Nevada licensed attorney. With that, as you all know, the RPA has a provision that requires mediation. And Nevada law is now that if there is a mediation provision in any contract, it's what's known as a conditioned precedent for litigation, which is just a fancy lawyer way of saying you have to go to mediation before you go to court. As some of you may know, the local real estate association isn't offering mediation services anymore. They're pushing you to go to a free service known as the Regional Justice Center, Neighborhood Justice Center. And one of the things that they've talked about is they're really quick, they can get you in quickly, and there's no fee. So I wanted to kind of go through an experience that I had going through a mediation over an earnest money dispute during COVID. So the first thing was—
Can you say that in English? So basically the association is no longer doing mediation?
Exactly. And so
their alternative that's supposed to be easier and free, supposed to be. You're gonna tell us.
You get what you pay for. So I kind of wanted to walk through my experience with this so that your agents know exactly what this free service is. So it's a relatively small amount of money. It was a $10,000 earnest money amount. So not a whole lot. One of the big problems we're having with COVID is finding a place to mediate. So the Neighborhood Justice Center does mediations, but they do it by telephone. So that means they get everybody on a conference call and you kind of start. So, and they get you in quickly. Like if you call today, you could probably get in next week, which at first I was kind of excited about until I spoke to the mediator. And I said, let me know when you need me to send you a mediation brief. So for those of you who haven't been through mediation, mediators typically known as a third-party facilitator of dialogues. He or she's not a judge, but generally speaking, in my 19 years of experience practicing law in Nevada, you always submit a brief to the mediator. You tell the mediator what your case is. And sometimes they ask you to tell you your strengths or weaknesses, a confidential brief that will, tell you what you're willing to settle for, all of that stuff. So I call the mediator and I say, okay, great. We've reached out. Let me know if I can send you my mediation brief. To which the mediator says, oh, this is a GOVR case. I don't need it, which was very unusual because the case that we were arguing was a case that the buyer claimed they're entitled to the earnest money because they couldn't perform because of COVID. Mm-hmm. Because their lender said, we're not lending anymore due to this national COVID virus. The seller's position was—
Which is happening all the time.
All the time.
Their jobs, they're getting coronavirus, the whole— okay.
The seller's position was it didn't matter, and that's not the case. So right off the bat, what that told me was that this mediator didn't care about the specific facts of the case or felt that wasn't necessary for him to do his job. This is the first mediation in my entire legal career that's like that. So that really surprised me. And it also explains why they can get you in so quickly, because they're not doing any research into your case, which made me realize that now my case could be an outliner. This is my experience. There might be different scenarios with them, but if they're not taking the time to read the RPA, to find out what your facts are, it's a very interesting mediation. And so how it works, they put us all on the phone and they're set for 2 hours. 2-hour schedules, and then you have the opportunity to come back a total of 3 times. So the mediator was not the type of mediator that would sit down and say, here are the strengths and weaknesses of your case. Here are, this is what's going to happen if you go down to court, which if you've been to mediation in Southern Nevada and Northern Nevada, for that matter, that's kind of typically the way it's done, where the mediator will say, here's your strengths and weaknesses. This is what may happen if you go to court. But this guy just basically said, seller, tell us how you feel. Buyer, tell us how you feel. Which the first 2 hours of that mediation was essentially them trying to argue like it is a trial. We're right, you're wrong. We're right, you're wrong. We got nowhere. So we cut it off and said, we're gonna go to court. They asked for a second session, we did it again. That same session turned out to be exactly the same. Buyer and seller saying, I'm right, you're right, I'm right, I'm right. And just, it was almost like that Bugs Bunny, Elmer Fudd, or excuse me, Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, rabbit season, duck season thing, all for like 2 hours. So then finally, I said, I'm not doing this anymore because my client's paying me by the hour. So far, we've wasted 4 hours of time. And I said, if you got another offer, we'll do it by email. We ended up actually setting it, but it took about 5, maybe 6 hours of my time. So the thing that you need to realize, if you're going to use this program, at least for right now, it's going to be telephonic, which means it's not going to be as effective as a face-to-face mediation. The mediators down there will not accept a brief, meaning that they don't feel like the facts of your case, the reason why your buyer or seller did what they did, is relevant to their ability as a mediator. They're really just kind of saying, tell us how you feel. Okay, tell us how you feel. And that process can either be really effective if both parties are aware of it and want to settle. But if both parties just want to puff their chest and say they're right, you're going to waste a lot of time.
Let's talk about mediation. I mean, mediation for someone like me is torture. I don't know about you, Pops. It's torture because it's like circling the wagon, right? So I've been in 7-hour mediations just for the both sides to be like, screw this, let's just go to arbitration. Let's go. So the backstory for Dave is in the purchase agreement, you have a provision where you agree to mediate before you sue each other. The whole point of mediation is so that you try to settle before you're paying money for attorneys, before you let another body make the decision for you, right? Especially on procuring cause, usually you lose you usually get all the money or you lose all the money. So mediation, number one, in my opinion, you need to be in person. That's one of the things, good luck, because it needs to be an emotional thing. And number two, you need a good mediator, which doesn't sound like this is a good mediator at all. And even at the association, I could count on one finger maybe how many good mediators there are. So it's kind of a waste and a lot of times. Although I have seen, in all fairness, people come to terms through mediation. Are you saying that now that the association's not doing it, it's a waste of time?
What I'm saying is that your agents need to really allow a buyer and seller to think about that provision. Because once you sign it, you have to do it. It's enforceable. If you don't go to mediation, say you do.
You're just giving up time. I mean, even with you as an attorney, like if I want to spend the money, I may bring you to intimidate the other side. But the reality is I want you at the arbitration. That's where I need you, right? More than anything.
So what I would say is that if you're talking about, so we're going to talk about two separate things: earnest money disputes in the RPA, and then commission disputes down at the association. If the earnest money amount is less than 10 grand, you're going to small claims, maybe mediation is in your best interest. If the money's more than that, you may really want to have your client go talk to an attorney about the pros and cons. Because I'll be honest with you, if you came to me right now and said, should I enter into the mediation provision? Because of the fact the association isn't offering it, because the only other place that you really can go for low cost is the neighborhood justice center, which they do a good job. It's just, the mediation process is far more not necessarily lax, but far more hands-off than I think what a lot of people have an idea of. And for example, you could really blow through attorney's fees that are more than the 10 grand or 15 grand or whatever, just because of this telephonic back and forth kind of thing. Whereas if you're in person, you're sitting there. There's nowhere else you can go. There's that kind of pressure to get it done. And who knows when they'll go back to that with everything that's going on in the world. Look, the thing about mediation that is the interesting part is if you opt out of it in the RPA, you can always agree to do it later if you want to. It's just that if you opt in when you sign the RPA, you have to do it. So there's no real ability to say, we don't want to mediate, we'll go straight to small claims if it's less than 10 grand, because they are doing small claims cases again. I've been down there, everybody's masked up. They even actually have people from the neighborhood justice center in the hallway out in front of the small claims court saying, do you want to mediate your case right now?
All
So
right,
Yeah.
let's jump. Like you want to mediate, like in these cases, because you're giving us the technical, and a lot of people like the technical, but a lot of people are like, all they hear is like, you
I
know,
get paid by the syllable.
how people, you know, how in Peanuts you hear, wah, 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 wah. That's what people hear, right? So let's ask some specific questions, right? So my father and I, with your assistance, in these mediations and arbitrations, you really don't want to be nowadays the party who is stopping the other party because they lost their job or because of COVID. It's a bad look. Even if you're right, what's going to happen when you go all the way down to a small claims court or you go to an arbitration appeal is like, yeah, the seller's in the right that the buyer owes them an EMD, but the buyer got laid off from MGM. The buyer's, you know, mother has COVID-19 and all they want is their $5,000 earnest money back. You know, is that gonna, you'd assume that's gonna have an effect on the whole thing.
Best takeaway for your agents today is if they have an earnest money dispute right now for the foreseeable future, it is far better for the buyer and seller to reach some kind of agreement on their own before they go anywhere else. Because even if they skip mediation, go to small claims. I was in small claims last month on a case that was filed in October of 2019. So that's how far backed up they are. And that's assuming that they're going to continue to stay open. So you're not going to get down there. You're not going to get through this process if you don't reach a resolution for months, if not a year plus. So the discussion with the client when you're going through the RPA of saying, you know, this is kind of where we are with COVID, this may take a long time, is something that I've been recommending to people when I get calls and say, we want to fight over $2,000. I'm like, you're insane. There's no reason.
But this is how you should do it. Your original mediator is the guy, the bald guy I'm looking at right there. That should be your mediator. Not, it should be your broker owner at your company. That's the original mediator. So the way we do it, this is the reason why we have Dave, is not because we want to go to mediation or we want to go to arbitration. It's because an issue comes to us. And first, before we even reach out to our legal counsel, we have 60 years of experience saying, all right, let's try to make this work. Let's get everyone on the phone. That's where brokers come in to play, right? That, I mean, that's the, isn't that, knock on wood?
You know, it comes back to, remember when you sold your house and the guy had his money in Southwest escrow?
Exchange.
Yeah, and he passed every form of contingency, and that 10 grand was Dave's. I was the broker on it because, you know, we didn't want him to list his own.
Ivan Sher represented the buyer.
Right, and he lost everything when that title company went under, and Dave had every right.
It was an exchange company. They held money on the 1031s.
Yeah, they had every right. And Dave said, Dad, I don't want the money. The guy just lost $450,000 in a scheme. And my conscience tells me I should not take this money. And we gave it back. It's a little bit of what's going on today. I know, Dave, it's not the legal end of it, but Comma is you know, they got.
How do you spell that, comma? Is it K-A-R-M-E-R?
Comma?
It wasn't C-O-M-M-A. I'm totally confused. Dave, you're absolutely right. Right now, working out, finding some common ground and getting it resolved and being able to move on with your life is probably your best option. I don't know how the judges are going to look at sellers taking advantage of the COVID-19 pandemic. That's not a good play. That's a really dangerous step because you're counting that a judge is going to say, you're right. You don't need to, you're entitled to this money even though the buyer lost his job because of COVID, or they can't secure financing because of COVID, or whatever reason. And I don't know how the judges are going to act, and it's going to take a couple years to figure it out.
Exactly. It's you know, it's almost like the cancel culture, right? Well, I gotcha. So I'm going to take your earnest money. No, like even when even when the buyer completely flakes out, and the seller has every right to take the money, if the seller can get the thing back in escrow quickly and close quickly and there's no harm, no foul, it's like, move on with your life. Like, you want to be right, or do you just want to get the deal done? And that's where it comes into play. Like, my father and I will try to work this out with, Georgia or Jennifer as our brokers. We'll try to get everyone on 99 out of 100 times, maybe even 999 times out of 1,000. We can find some common ground and get people. And then before we even go to Dave, before we get Dave involved, I'll call him, or my father will call him and be like, all right, we need the legal advice. So we can come back and say our legal counsel, former legal counsel for the association, and 2 past presidents of the association. I mean, this is what we, this is our take on it. Like, let's get there. And then if we can't go that, then the nuclear option is we bring out the AR-15, which is Dave Sanders. And then, but we do everything other than try. We exhaust every possibility, then bring you out, right? But we also have the counsel the entire time. I mean, there's a lot of times where you'll be like, walk away. Just walk away. It's like a Facebook post. Just walk away. When I was in Encinitas with the girls, I told this story yesterday. We're walking back from the beach. You see, even though we had that great view, it's such a steep drop that we didn't have stairs to the beach. We had to walk maybe like a quarter of a mile to the stairs and go down on the beach. Whoa, 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 whoa. What do you got to do? You use the bathroom, coffee? Where you go?
I'm getting coffee right a few feet away.
So we're walking back, and because like you got 50 million people on this street, we're kind of wearing masks because we're in California. We're kind of not. I'm protecting my girls. My wife's pregnant. And this woman who looked like, the woman from Something About Mary, that was her roommate. You know which one I'm talking about? The one that was like really weathered, right? Looks just like this woman, drunk out of her mind. It's like noon, a cigarette hanging out of, and I couldn't make this up. She was like 3 houses down from her, and she was still living in a house that was like partially burned down, right? And she sees me and my beautiful family and goes, "Get those kids out from the middle of the street. Protect those girls." And I'm like, now this could go a lot of different ways, Dave, right? Especially with me. And I wanted to be like, really, lady, you're sitting in front of a burnt down house, right? You're going to give me advice, right? Could have said a couple other things like whatever. And for once, I just smiled and kept walking. I just smiled and kept walking. Now, even my wife was like, "I'm surprised you didn't say anything." My kids were like, "I would have said this." And I said, sometimes it's just nice to keep walking on by and not engaging. And that's the social media move, but it's also in business. Just walk on by and engage. We're realtors, you're an attorney. Our job is to be the most sane, unemotional, pragmatic party in the transaction. That's why we get paid the big bucks. That's why realtors are there. And then when realtors can't figure it out, that's where attorneys come in. But I've seen people spend $3,500 to get $3,500 back just to prove a point through an attorney. And you're such a fair man. You always say that in this case, only 2 people are going to win. The attorneys on both sides, right?
They don't need a third vote. I do want to say one thing that came up during this mediation as advice what not to do as a realtor. I'm not going to mention names here. So during the part of the mediation, the seller got a letter from their agent's broker that said, in their professional opinion, the buyer is in breach of the contract because of XYZ. And when I saw that, unfortunately, we reached a resolution. We didn't have to go forward because let me walk through the 3 huge problems with this letter. Number one, they say in their professional opinion. What profession are they? They are a realtor. Under NRS 645, can a realtor tell you when a party breaches a contract?
No.
No. They then go ahead and say, these are the reasons why. And they put it in writing. The definition of practicing law in Nevada without a license is advising any individual on any issue that impacts any legal right. So basically, everyone is practicing law without a license everywhere. So I understand what happened. I know the seller called their agent and said, the lawyer on the other side is saying there's force majeure, there's unenforceability, there's there's all these legal issues as to why they couldn't perform, and I need something to respond. And then this broker typed up this letter. So you're going to have situations where your clients are going to ask you to do stuff like that. And frankly, I'm stunned to see this, because not only did they put it in writing, but they said professional opinion. When I write a professional opinion as an attorney as to whether something is legal or not, I charge thousands of dollars for that, because if I'm wrong, it's my malpractice insurance on the line. And so lawyers, we don't mess around with that. You want a position paper that you're right, it's going to cost you $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, if not more, because I have to judge how much this could blow back on. And so, fortunately for this broker,
are you a lawman, Mr. Lawman?
Yes, I am. So unfortunately, you just got to be careful with that, because this was not only a violation of the Realtor Code of Ethics, since you can't practice law, it's a violation of NRS 645, and the unauthorized practice of law in Nevada is actually a misdemeanor. So
wow.
I know what was happening was the broker wanted to be like that go-to source, because that's what you guys want to do. Whenever I have a client that asks me to do something that, one, is outside of my skill set, or two, is unethical, I say, you seem like a lovely person, you're not worth my license to practice law. So that was, to me, the big takeaway from this is when you get into earnest money disputes, when you get into who is, your clients are going to ask you this stuff, you really got to be careful, because it is not a bright shiny line. The Supreme Court specifically said we want this to be a gray area. We want to look at the facts. So I can't say do this and you'll be okay, don't do this and you'll be okay. It is the wild, wild west, Mr. Johnny Cash.
All right, so let's jump in first, Pops.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the floor with this, because you seem to have the most information. My father is the regional vice president of Region 11, which is Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada. A lot of these states. And so you're on a lot of these councils and whatnot on what's going on in Las Vegas real estate. So what's the story with open houses? And once you give us the update, we're going to talk to Dave about best practices if and when they open this up.
What's the story? The story is they are not allowed in the state. It expired at the end of the month. We're getting clarification now from the governor, but basically he said 2 days ago, anything that's enforced right now is not changing. So our assumption on that is no open houses are enforced by his directive. And he said no directive is changing. So I would say right now that open houses are still out.
So here's the crazy thing. We hold our agents to the highest level of accountability. And for the last 3-4 months, no open houses. Now, a lot of our agents do open houses and they make money off of open houses. And we've been watching all these companies around us doing open houses. Our agents lose their minds about it. Like, why are they doing it? But we say, just because other people breaking the rules or trying to skirt around these rules, we're not going to do that. That's not who we are as a company. That does not align with the values of my father and I, right? I'm not saying that we're not that we're goody two-shoe perfect people, because we're not, but it's just wrong. And, a lot of people are trying to play the game of, well, if it's an appointment only open house and blah, 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 blah. Listen, I think there's a safe way to do open houses. The reality is maybe the governor should be reaching out to someone like Dave Sanders or my father and saying, here's a best practices way to do open houses that'll be less of any risk compared to going to Albertsons, Costco, or even a restaurant, right? But we're not there yet. So our goal is, once this is open, or if we can somehow lobby to have open houses, this is the way we would do them. Dave and I have been talking about this. My father and I have also been talking about this, of to be ready when they're allowed. So what we're going to do is a best practices for our agents, where we're going to set the standard and set the direction of how to do this. Some of the things, this is where an attorney comes in. Right off the bat, though, there's going to be a sign on the front door, or a sign in the yard, or whatever, saying, here's what you have to do. Text to come in, one family at a time. There's going to be, if obviously all the lawyer stuff of if you're having any symptoms, things like that. And it's going to be, actually, because open houses, listen, there's a lot of, this is not a sexist thing, but there's a lot of women who get attacked in open houses too. So the fact that, there's a higher level of accountability to go into an open house to text information is actually a good thing, right? So I think we can handle and take care of a lot of things by having a best practices and having a list of requirements before you come in open house. What are some of the things that we're talking about adding on to that, Dave? And Pops also jump in on that.
Well, I'd say the first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you're reopening your league like the NBA and not like the Florida Marlins, who have, 17 people on their team with COVID, didn't tell the other side, all that fun stuff. To me, I look at what businesses are open and what precautions are they taking. And so if you have been to the doctor since COVID-19 has happened, I think that's your future of what open houses are, because to me, there's not a whole lot of difference between a doctor's office and an open house. If you go to a doctor or a dentist, if you'll notice, you make your appointment, they have a sign up on the front door saying, don't come in, text this number, we'll text you, and then you can come in. You must wear a mask, no more than 6 people. And I think that's how you're going to have to do an open house, because I don't think you can have just random people opening up the door, walking in without masks, without social distancing, not knowing how many people are inside, all that fun stuff. So I think that's how it's going to look.
I think it's also going to look like a showing by appointment, just one after another, right, Pop? I mean, you think about it, when you show a listing and you're a listing agent, you already have rules in place. Like the seller's requesting you wear masks, the seller's requesting you wear whatever, like it's the seller. And you're not going to have more than one showing at a time. It's going to be segmented. But this way, you could actually have people in line. If you're lucky enough to have an open house with that much traffic, it's super simple. It's just one appointment by only showing at a time, that this just so happens that they showed up unannounced, and they're just making the appointment outside the door to walk in the next 3 minutes. It's super simple. I mean,
and the state organization has put into the governor to all these things you're talking about, Dave, how to do them, how to get them. And he more or less at that time, with COVID and hospitals filling up again, he put it on a back burner. We keep on trying to get it. But at the same time, if you listen to him, he said those who break the rules will be punished. Those who don't break, those who obey the rules will be rewarded. So on that basis, we're going to contact them again, because our company's had 2 inspections already and it's gotten 100% each time. So
the inspections, though.
the city we're in the city, and our Summerlin office, the city inspector comes in, looks to see all employees and all agents have masks on, looks to see that we have the 6-foot separation on all our conference rooms and computers, looks to see that we have all the Clorox sprays and every hand wipes to protect ourselves. And that, now you really look like Black Bob. Both times, both times we got 100%. And remember, you don't want to be the agent or the company that closes your company down or creates a large fine. So we have been 100% compliant. It's not our choice. It's what you have to do. And in the last directive the governor gave, it's on you. So remember, if you're showing a house, and Dave will speak about this, and you don't wear a mask and your client gets COVID, there's legal ramifications for that. You just don't want to be in a lawsuit. In other words, for not following the rules.
I gotta tell you, I don't want to make this political, but man, I've been wanting to go into a store like this my entire life. And, and we're an open carry state, so I could technically have my 2 guns on each holster and walk into anywhere just like this.
You're definitely going back to your childhood, Dave.
All I heard was I need to increase the amount of money I charge you. But I remember going into the bank. I didn't have a face mask. All I had was a bandana. So I tied the bandana on and I walked in and then started to laugh. And the teller said, "What's so funny?" I said, "If you'd have told me 10 years ago, I walk into a bank with a bandana around my face and demand money and you'd give it to me and I'd say, 'Thank you, have a nice day,' and walk out, I would have laughed you out of the room." But that unfortunately has happened. So there's a couple of things, even with the liability proof of COVID-19 is going to be very difficult because you're going to have to prove that you got it from showing the house or whatever. But I think that, I think that, most sellers have cameras in their home and they can see when buyers leave the property. And if I've put in the MLS, seller and seller's agent must wear masks, and they leave my house and I've got the video and they don't have the mask, I now have proof that they violated the Realty Code of Ethics, that they have accessed the home in direct violation of the seller's request and how that access has occurred. So setting aside your political views, whether or not masks or not, as a realtor, if a seller says, "This is the condition to come into my home," to me, there's no difference in that scenario than you failing to lock the back door on the way out, or you lose the key, or your client uses the bathroom and doesn't flush it, and the seller comes home and finds that. That, to me, is a clear violation of the Realtor Code of Ethics. This is a condition that I've said you're all welcome to come into my home, and you failed to agree and comply with it.
Not to mention, everyone has cameras now, so you better comply. We were talking about this on the broker roundtable yesterday. Just in general, you don't want to be giving up how much you like the house or what you want to offer or anything. You start talking about or doing things inside of that house, you forfeit all of your rights once you're in a private property, right, Pop? Excuse me, right, Dave? Because
in Nevada is what's known as a one-party state for video recording. The only exclusion is if you have what's known as an expectation of privacy, which is why back when you could go to the gym, there would be a sign up in the locker room saying use of videos and phones in the locker room is prohibited, because there is an expectation of privacy that if I'm going to go to a locker room or a public restroom, no one's going to record me. But there's not that in a person's home, and so there's no requirement for the seller to disclose it.
A little fun aside, remember there was an agent who was going into a house and they were doing some sexual stuff in there, and there was a recording on it.
Yep.
And they gave up their rights. I mean, even using the bathroom, which is crazy and so gross, people can record you. If you use someone's private home in their bathroom, they can legally record you. I mean, I know there's an expectation, but man,
yeah. The one thing I would tell you to be careful with is we do have a different standard for telephone calls. Telephone calls in Nevada is what's known as an all-party consent state, meaning that like if you walk into my house and I can record you with a camera because I've set it up, that's enough. But if you call a buyer's agent or a seller's agent, they can't record that phone call without everybody agreeing up front. It's actually a felony in the state of Nevada to record a phone call like that.
Thank you for saying that. I want you to say it again. Everyone listen to this, because if I get one more call over the 8 years we've owned this place or the 15 years I've been a broker, and they're like, I got them recorded, and I'm like, well, you just did a felony. You know what I mean? You can't record someone without their consent, right?
Yeah. You can't record a telephone call without their consent. If you are in a conference room and recording it, or if they're in your home and it's video, it's different. Just telephone calls are different, which is why whenever you call your credit card company or a business, they will always say what? This call is monitored. So that's the disclosure. Your right is to then either hang up, or if you continue, you're waiving your right. So yeah, that one, be very, very careful with recording telephone calls, just because, and unfortunately, that is the type of crime that you would have to disclose to the real estate division. And
All right,
could potentially lose your license over.
Let's jump into the other one where I think either people are ignoring it or they just have no clue. So it's either ignorance or arrogance, which is the two things that get us as people in trouble all the time. Pops, again, you start this one out. Coming soon's, baby, right? So this was passed right on what, May 1st, I believe. This is an NAR directive. People losing their mind over it, especially the high end. So the reality is this. Explain it, Pops. You want me to explain it? You explain it.
So what happened was it was passed in November of last year, and the reason we waited till May 1st was to give people the time to understand it and implement that you couldn't do it. So basically, if you had an off the market listing, yet you were advertising it, what happens is you advertise the listing, my buyer's interested. I have no access to it, but they know about it because you did a sign or an ad or anything else. Now I lose the buyer to you because I don't have access to that property, which on multiple listing, when you join it, it basically says you are giving access to your property the minute it becomes public. So a lot of people don't know that rule doesn't apply if Urban Nest wants to go through its 3 branches and advertise a listing. That rule doesn't apply. It applies when it goes to the public. That's when it applies. And that's when.
Even that's an interesting carve out, though.
It is a carve out.
Because
it is a carve out.
It's still
Well, it is because they're saying if it's in-house, then if Dave Sanders is looking for that house, he's not going to know any way to know that that house is available. The minute it goes to the public, then everybody has to have the right in this business to sell that property to their client, rather than their client leave them to go get the property. So,
there's 2 reasons why people use coming soon. One is well-intended. I think there's this feeling of exclusivity and this feeling of like, you're going to have access that other people don't have. And, real estate's an emotional game. So people like, especially on the high end, it's like saying, I got, this Alexander Calder painting, and I'm going to do a private viewing for you first before we put it on auction.
mhm.
That is a tactic that's a marketing tool. The other one is where it really, really hurts a seller. And that's when you're trying just to sell it to one of your own people. And the whole point of the MLS was a game changer for real estate. What people don't know, MLS, basically you put the listing on and then every single agent has access to it. The more people that have access to it, the more you're marketing it, the more buyers through buyers agents can, more exposure, everybody wins. Like if you go search for a house in Italy, you have to go to 20 different brokerages because they don't have an MLS. You got to go to brokerage 1 that has 100 listings, and that's all they market. Then you got to go to brokerage 2, and you do that. It is completely tedious, and you don't get all the choices you want, and it doesn't benefit the seller because the seller isn't getting to the most people possible. So I know everyone goes after the MLS and, we got to do this to the MLS, but the MLS is the little thread holding this whole real estate industry together right now. Without it, right back to the wild, wild west. And what people don't understand is when you start going like this, look at my new listing coming in 5 days, and you're on Instagram, you're breaking the rules, right, Dave?
Yeah, all it takes is a screenshot and submit it to the MLS, and the fines are pretty aggressive. They're $1,000 for the first one, $2,002 or $5,000 for the second, and the third you get called in to explain your behavior. The other thing to remember about the MLS that I think a lot of people forget is, as an attorney, I think you should get rid of the MLS, because right now the MLS is a compensation agreement. If the seller doesn't pay you, you go down to GOAR, you do your arbitration. You don't have to be represented by an attorney. It's quick, it's efficient. If that goes away, your commercial real estate that hire people like me to go down and fight at the courthouse for your money. That is the thing that I think a lot of people really forget is the reason why you don't have to hire a lawyer every time there's a commission dispute is the MLS. It is not it is not NAR, it's not state law, it's not that you have some kind of special carve out. It is the MLS at its soul is a compensation agreement. It is, if I bring a ready, willing, and able buyer, you're going to pay me. And there's a provision and a process for you to secure that doesn't require you to hire an attorney and go to court. And so that, to me, alone is the value. Because if you think about Dave in the 7, 8 years you guys have been open, how many arbitrations have you had to go down and do? 20,
3,
30, 40?
3, 4, 5. Yeah, I've done
4,
3.
4, 5. Right?
Yeah.
About 3 or 4, 5 myself.
So 6, 7.
Yeah.
If you had to litigate those, you probably wouldn't be making any kind of money, because the attorney would take it by the hour.
We do so little commercial deals, and even on those tiny percentage, I mean, less than 1% of our business, probably 0.5% of our business is commercial. And even then, trying to get that money is so difficult. Then even on rentals, so difficult getting that money. You know, when we start searching for spaces for our offices and stuff like that, we go to like 3 different MLSs to even look. And then I'll be driving and I'll see something for rent and I'll be like, it isn't on any of the 3 MLSs that I even saw. So here we are in 2020, and I still have to drive around where I want to put one of our offices just to see if I missed out on something that's available. Now, a lot of commercial agents love that because you got to come to them, but it doesn't help. There's so much missed opportunity, and a lot of commercial agents really aren't in a rush to do anything either because of that. So, but back to this coming soon. Here's the thing, guys. You can still use coming soon, but it's got to be on the MLS. We have an MLS provision for coming soon, and there's some benefits. So agents out there, if we haven't marketed it well, not we, excuse me, if the associate, I say we because it was one of my babies. I was against coming soons for the longest time. But what people were doing was they were going to go put that coming soon on Zillow and completely bypassing the MLS. So I said, if we're going to go down this road, let's at least control it through the MLS and protect the seller, because that's what our job is to do: protect the seller, to serve the seller. So put it on coming soon for the seller. 15,000 agents will get access to it. Don't syndicate it, which the MLS has screwed that up. And then the reality is, don't start the clock. So if you have a listing that should be $399, but your seller wants to try it at a unicorn price at $425, you put it on coming soon and see but your clock isn't going to start ticking. It isn't going to say it's been on Zillow for 30 days. You're going to get almost like a free trial period at that price. Or if you're doing work on it, or if the seller needs to, move or travel, that's what coming soon is for. But when you're putting the sign in the yard 4 or 5 days early so that you can collect buyers, that doesn't help your seller. Or you're putting it on Zillow before it's on the MLS, you're just trying to double end it, right? So that's why it's in place. I'm still getting emails from one agent that I've tried to, because I hate narcs and I hate rats, whether it's my Italian coming out of me. I hate the Karens like you know what I mean? So I get an email from this guy who's just oblivious. First I thought he was oblivious. Now he's just, I don't think he gives a shit. And he sends out emails going, coming soon, coming soon, coming soon. And then his next emails are open house, open house, open house. And I'm like, come on, man, play by the rules. But do I press report? No, maybe I should. Maybe I should narc this guy out because he's not playing by the rules. Guys, listen, you can get fined for this stuff. If you're doing an open house and OSHA cracks down, You and your broker are gonna get fined.
And Dave, some of the other keywords, it's not just coming soon, it's off market, exclusive only. Those are the keywords that will get you sued. You know,
And you think you're gonna get away with it? But you know, there's gonna be a realtor who sees you and maybe they got it out for you and they're gonna turn you in. They're gonna turn you in. And I told the agents yesterday, if you're the agent that gets us a $5,000 OSHA fine,
they're paying it.
You should hope for a $5,000 OSHA fine. You should hope for a $5,000 OSHA fine. The county has gone around in the past and revoked business licenses for people staying open. There was the liquor store stayed open even after they were closed in like March and April, and they rolled in and revoked their business license. So the fines could be the least of your worries.
Yeah.
imagine.
Then Dave and I will have to wear that black hat and mask, and we'll have to go robbing banks. Senior robs a bank.
And
It's
we'll
all
be-
hypothetical.
I'll be-
No intent is implied by that statement.
Oh, I think it'll be an Italian cowboy, like a mafia cowboy. Oh, that's great. All right. So what else can we talk about? Let's talk about.
I do want to point out one thing about the coming soon. Yes, and you mentioned some of the high-rise markets. They've already sued NAR. We'll see what happens. So add it to another one of the lawsuits against NAR right now.
Yeah, they're not. It's a hard lawsuit. They expected at that meeting, we have 850 directors throughout the United States. That passed almost 100% because it's just being, as Dave said, fair to your seller and fair to the buyer. It's not gonna go anywhere because it's the right thing.
Let's talk a little bit about marketing. So mass text, Dave, that's, you know, even as a brokerage, it's tempting to be like, let's send out, we got GLVR or association elections coming. So if they come out, I know last year this was a big deal. Someone sent one out at 3 a.m., right? Irony is he ended up winning, but no one turned him in.
And
What? I mean, what happens?
at 2 o'clock in the morning, that woke 500 realtors up. Yes, that did happen.
What's the story with you sending out a mass text, vote for me, or a mass text, you know, come join Urban Nest, or a mass text, come look at my property? What's the rules around that?
If you text someone for business purposes, you have to they have to opt in at first. So you can't just in mass text 15,000 realtors without every single one of those saying opting in. There's also requirements that there has to be a response that allows you to opt out of receiving additional texts. The Telephone Consumer Protection Act specifically states that. So if you've ever been or seen on TV a commercial or been to an outdoor event where they have a big sign, so, you know, win a free taco, text 6465, you know, but it'll have really, really small letters that only the lawyers read, all these things about you have to disclose that your phone carrier may charge you. You have to disclose you have the ability to opt out, all of those things. So if you mass text without permission, it is a very easy way to run afoul of the FTC, the Federal Trade, the FCC, the Federal Communication Commission. The fines can be hefty. It's anywhere from $1,000 per occurrence. There's actually 3 lawsuits going on right now nationwide where class action plaintiffs are claiming that they received mass texts from realtors, some in California, 2 cases out of Florida, and they're trying to get class action status for nationwide for anyone who received a text from a realtor from 2014 to 2000 and like to the present. So the sheer numbers of that amount of those sanctions are incredibly difficult. There's a right way to do that. For example, we talked about open houses and maybe texting to get in. That is probably not enough for me. Texting you for access is probably not enough for you to add me to your marketing efforts. You probably need to have that disclaimer, that disclosure by, you know, you opt in.
Can't you prove that you have a relationship
So there is an exclusion for if it's a business relationship. So if you have an existing, if I'm your client, you're selling my house, you can absolutely text me. If I'm your buyer, you can absolutely text me. That provision typically lasts for about another year after that. After that, you're going to need some kind of specific opt-in. Just like your emails have to have that language that says, this is a business solicitation, click here to opt out, here's our privacy rules, all that fun stuff. You have to do the same thing with texts. Now, fortunately, if you are going to go down this road, there's lots of companies that offer that service that can do that for you. But the key for you on the front end is, if I'm coming,
they're liable, not you.
yeah. If I'm a buyer or seller, you can certainly put me in your farm and text me.
Yeah.
I've probably given the approval to do that. If I'm some random person that you have my phone number because we have mutual friends, that's probably not enough.
Yeah.
I'd be very careful with that. And then there has to be those disclosures because the fines are that way. And if you go to the FCC's website, there's a place for me to anonymously rat you out.
There was a guy who tried that nonsense with us. I mean, we proved that there was a relationship. All right, Dave, I got to cut you off a little bit. I want you to be a part of this if you want to jump in.
Sure.
Pops, we did say a little bit of a market update for some of these, when we marketed this thing out. So let's give them a little bit of a, little taste on what's going on. I mean, not a lot has changed, but I want to make sure that the people who tuned in that aren't normally here, that are getting a little bit of an update of what's happening.
What's happening is we have a very healthy market right now. Available single family homes of 4919, which is from St. Patty's Day on March 17th, about 500 up. And contingent pending homes of single family is 4363, which is even up then from the COVID-19 beginning. Basically, what I'm saying to you is we have houses for sale, approximately 5,000 single family, and we have buyers still out there. I believe that one of the rushes to buy right now is low interest, and we don't know how long that's going to last. And I think that's the impetus that's making buyers buy right now, because at 3%, you're getting so much for your money compared to the higher percentages. So I would call this a very healthy, balanced market.
Read an article about how the dollar is getting crushed, right? And a great way, I mean, listen, I'm going to give the same caveat. Dave is an attorney, us as brokers, realtors. A great way, though, a potential great way to beat the dollar is to invest in real estate, and I always say there's pretty much 2, maybe 3 things that I believe in investing in. And the number one thing I believe in investing is in ourselves. So what I mean by that is an education, but also maybe number 2, which is also 1B, let's say, is investing yourself as a business, right? Opening up a business, making, basically you're the brand, you're the business. So invest in yourself. But the number 3 thing, which over time, and this is a fact, so we can say it, they've done studies, and from all the peaks and valleys of real estate, on average, real estate goes up 3% a year, even with all the drops. If you take the curves always go like this on the way up. So if you take that, you put a straight line, eventually it meets that. So real estate, I'm not gonna say it's a can't miss, but if you want to at least keep up with inflation, it's your investment. And right now, you can borrow money at less than inflation prices, at 2.6, 2.7, 2.8, right? So real estate's the game. It's always the game. I know the stock market's crushing it and all that, but the stock market doesn't have some of the carve-outs that real estate has. I mean, you got to think what pre-tax and post-tax dollars are. You have this little thing called capital gains. And when you make money in businesses, in stock markets, you have to pay capital gains, which is huge, 20, 30, 40%. In real estate, You stay in that house for 2 years and you make $250,000, it's tax-free. If you're married, you can make up to $500,000 tax-free. Do you know what $250,000 would be if you would have to make, excuse me, in a business or in stocks and any other thing to clear 250, add another 30-40% on top of that. You'd have to make like $400,000 in order to take 250 out. That's why real estate has such an advantage. I don't see it slowing down anytime soon, even if we do dip with evictions and people bailing because they are late on their mortgages. I still see that the corporations are gonna come in and buy everything anyway. So
And
that's,
my answer to that is, if your house depreciates for some reason during this market, if you're buying your home and you get a 3% or 2.75, whatever's going on right now, and you look at that interest rate versus what you would pay a lower price at a 4 or 5% interest, it depends what you're using your house is. But again, when Dave was born in 77, I bought a house, and with A credit and 20% down, my interest rate was 8.5. So think of that.
Well, here-
42
so I
years
have to-
later, it's 3.
and then like if you're gonna sell because you don't want to be a landlord anymore, or you're gonna sell and pull equity out, you could also, if we do dip 3, 4, 5%, which who knows, maybe it happens after the election or next year.
No predictions.
We don't know. You can still buy back in. But here's the beauty of this is, I have this wonderful slide. It's mortgage payment for a $300,000 loan by decade. You see this? In
No,
the 70s, the average rate was 8.86. That's a $2,300 loan.
that's
In
me.
the 80s, it was a 12.7%, $300,000 loan, $3,200. So it jumps almost $1,000. In the 90s, 8.12, right back down to 2,200. In the 2000s, that down to 6.29. So now you're down to 1855 a month on a $300,000 loan. The 2010s down to 4%. That original loan in the 70s, that was $2,300, is now $1,400. Today, in the 3.03, the average rate on a $300,000 loan is $1,270. Now, that's not even taking into inflation on how strong, how far a dollar went in the 70s versus how far a dollar goes now. You know, I'm refining my house. That's going to drop like $1,400 a month. It's insanity. So if you've topped out and you made some equity, sell. Great. You don't want to be in that house, Dave. But then
That's what I'm doing. You make me happy with all this stuff.
then Dave may say, okay, I'll buy back in my vacation home and in my other home, right? Because he has different needs. But if you don't think, my guess, and this is like, I don't want to pretend I'm some guy on the billboards making predictions all over the place. But if you put a gun in my head and said, Dave, what do you think? I think it's going to be pretty good for the future. And one of the last takeaways, like it's going to, unfortunately, we talked about this yesterday, Pops, and the difference between the haves and the have-nots, unfortunately, is going to grow because people with money and the ability to keep taking loans and leveraging debt are going to continue doing that, and they're going to buy up everything. So
I have a question, Dave. On your Facebook page, do you have questions for Dave or myself or you or?
there was only one, and I don't think Dave can really answer this question, being an attorney. It was, I lost it, but there was one about an HOA lien and a foreclosure lien. When is it too late?
Well, HOA liens are interesting because the question comes down to super priority versus non-super priority. Super priority jumps to the front of the lien, wipe out the first, the second, and the whole nine. The short answer, when it's too late, generally speaking, is if the HOA's already sold the property, you're pretty much out of luck. So they do have to do a notice of sale, and then they have to notify you. They have to record it. They don't have to go through the foreclosure mediation program like a bank does. So it's a 90-day window. So I strongly recommend to everyone out there that you pay your HOA dues because they can take your home away faster than a bank or anybody else.
Which is insanity. But good luck selling that HOA foreclosure home.
Well, they never get clear title, right, Dave? There's never really the title that you want on it.
You know, I hate to give the lawyer answer if it depends, but it really depends on who the bank is. It depends on the notice. It depends on, you know, there's going to be years and years of litigation on this. For example, it's a Freddie and Fannie back note. It probably didn't wipe out the first. You know, did they apply the super priority part? Did they notify everyone that's there? It also depends on the bank. Some banks are fighting these aggressively. Some banks are not. There's a lot of risk in purchasing an HOA foreclosure. So, you know, if you're in that market, you should probably talk to an attorney.
Beautiful.
That's the right answer. And then talk to your title company. And the minute they say, oh, I can't give you the normal title insurance, red flag, there it is. That means something's wrong.
All that glitters is not gold if it's too good to be true, right?
All right.
All right, we're gonna wrap this up. Dave, if any agents want to reach out and see if good for your services, I don't know if you're able to do this, but I probably can. You can reach out to Dave as 702-290-1382, Dave Sanders Esquire. If you're interested in making a change as in the brokerages, my father and I still have 60 spots left. We are stopping at 500 agents. We are taking applications if you want to change your real estate path and career and grow. And then lastly, I will have a spot for both of you at the DMFT ranch. I mean, there will be a little cabin that you'll be able to stay on.
Well, I think you have to have
I want to see Dave on that horse.
I think you
It's
have
been
to
about
have,
20 years.
yeah, right. I think you have to have 2 cabins because you need to have my permanent residence. Because if you're having animals, no one knows how to take care of them better than me. That's number one.
Will you get on a
And
horse?
and who's gonna muck the stalls? Not you. That would definitely be my.
Listen, this isn't 1986 where we don't have a pot to piss in and we got to do everything ourselves. Like we could actually pay people to do this now.
You know that mucking the stalls is very therapeutic. Your brain quiets, and the only thing you do is take your pitchfork. And I know you think I'm joking, but it settles you to go and do that physical labor out there with the
But
horses.
there's a you got to.
All I heard was somebody volunteering to muck the stalls.
You got that, Dave.
Well, you got to make sure like all the hay and everything goes through, and because if you can muck a stall wrong, you're just basically shoveling shit, right? So I told I said to Ange, she didn't believe this, like that I helped build barns, that I helped build fences with the fence posts. She was like, well, why don't you do any of this stuff now? I'm like, what do you want me to be? You want me to be a businessman, a father, and you want me to be able to fix everything in the house? I mean, I only have time to do so many things. She was like, you did not do that. I was like, get me the thing. Pick up the
You
stuff.
want me to verify? We don't use that anymore, Dave. Now you use the power one that makes.
But that was not easy. I mean, you had to like
No,
get in there, you know, and I mean,
and then when you hit the rocks, you really died.
yeah, she didn't believe me that. Listen, unbelievably, you put me on a horse, I'm gonna look like Bill Horn, baby, and not many people are gonna know that, right? Bill Horn.
Right.
So that's all we got for you. I know we went a little late. Thank you, Mr. Sanders.
My pleasure.
I hate sharing you with the rest of the world, but it makes the rest of the world better. My goal in life is to make enough money that you can work just with us, but we got to share you with every other brokerage and whoever hires you, and they're lucky to have you. You are
Thank you, sir.
our secret weapon. So thanks. And then my
All right.
father, good seeing your face, brother. Brother Dave.
Good to see you.
Brother Dave. We're all Brother Dave.
Yeah. I'm the third coolest Dave on the Zoom call. That's not fair.
You're the only Dave on the Zoom call with hair. Let's start there.
I don't know what do you
Yeah.
call that thing? Is that like a mop? Like are you
It's just COVID
on
hair.
there, man?
That's
I
all
mean-
it is. It's just We're letting it see how bad it gets. It's getting curly in the back, which is really
Yeah.
kind of like mullet-like in the back there. So we'll see what happens.
You know, Dave, I could grow a mullet too, because I have all my hair. It would be gray and it would be curly, but it
Look
would
like
be.
I would pay to see that. I would pay
Yeah,
to see
Ron-
that.
so would I.
Ron Jeremy / Danny DeVito mullet, right?
You got it.
And then what I want Dave to do, what you really need to look awesome. I want you to take a lot of gel and just push it all the way back, like all of it. I want you to
Yeah.
look like.
And when I do it, the greed, for a lack of a better word, is good.
All right, guys, that was a
All right,
lot of
guys.
fun. You take care. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.